Welcome to Baddies for the People. I'm Rachel Pearl Jacobs.
And I'm Cheyenne Hunt.
And we're your resident baddies.
Let's get into it.
Welcome back, baddies. It's time for What's the Tea with me. Cheyenne, what's your tea this week?
This week, I have to talk about the most surreal experience, which is getting dragged out of a slump by Katie Couric and Elizabeth Banks, which is kind of insane. Let me take you back to the beginning. Screeching halt sound effect here. Back to the beginning. I have been in a content slump for a couple of reasons. One, it's just kind of, these are dark times. It's hard to feel inspired to keep kind of speaking out. We've talked about that a lot. But also, I have had a lot of my stuff censored on these platforms. The oligarchs do not like criticism of their ruling class, and I've had a lot of my content taken down. Our baddies page has had a lot of content taken down. And so it's really hard to find the will to keep posting things when you know your reach is going to be diminished and it might just straight up get, blocked. But I took a walk the other day. And this was, I talked about this on our last episode at the end, that this 24-year-old woman in Georgia was thrown in jail for having a miscarriage. And I found that to be just completely outrageous. And I was still upset about it after we talked about it. And so I went on a walk in my neighborhood. Outside.
She never films outside. I've been trying to convince her to film outside literally since we started this podcast. And she waits to make a video alone.
Yeah, well, because filming outside generally does not bode well for your content.
Except this content went viral without me.
It did. It really did. So I filmed this video. I'm like, this is not going to go anywhere. People are going to hate that I'm walking. The camera's shaky. You can hear the wind and the cars and people around me. And I don't know, I filmed it anyway, and I'm kind of angry, and I'm walking down the street and I'm talking about the case of this woman and how that people need to be talking about this. It's completely unjust. She's still in jail, even though it is not illegal to have a miscarriage. And it absolutely popped off. It's over like 500,000 views now. I wake up in the morning the next day and I see a comment from Katie Couric, who also followed me, saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. Keep doing this work. Keep walking. Elizabeth Holmes.
See, did you see that Freudian slip right there? Cheyenne is obsessed with Elizabeth Holmes. She means Elizabeth Banks.
I do mean Elizabeth Banks. I do love Elizabeth Holmes and her weird ass, though. I mean, like, women in male fields is all I'm saying. Like, if white men can be white collar criminals, women should be able to do it too.
White women.
Anyway, Elizabeth Banks put me on her Instagram story. And does this stuff like actually really matter? Like, to get accolades or celebrity attention? Probably not. But at the same time, like, it also shot me up followers. It gave me a sense of, you literally never know what's going to pop off. Like, film the video. Just like do it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And you never know what's going to resonate with people. So much is outside of our control. You never know what the algorithm's going to like or not like. You just never know where something's going to go. So if you're like someone who overthinks making the next move or interviewing for the job or trying the new thing or putting the video up, like, I'm telling you, just do it. Like, you literally never know where it's going to end up. And sometimes it ends up with the people who are meant to see it and it pops off. And yeah, so basically I was dragged out of a slump really violently by this. And it reminded me that we have work to do. When Katie Couric and Elizabeth Banks and all of these other women, I mean, thousands of comments tell you, thank you, keep walking, keep working. You want to keep walking and keep working. And that's pretty cool. So yeah, that's my tea.
Yes, this is why you should crash out for democracy, like I've been saying. Outside. Crash out for democracy outside.
Catch me outside. Crash out outside. How about that? Dylan, I need a Bad Baby graphic.
Or not.
Catch me outside. How about that?
Anyway, Rachel, what's the tea with you?
Well, the tea with me has to do with Trump's tariffs, because even though I look like a rich girl, I still care about my finances. And one of the things that first bonded Cheyenne and I together is that we are both allergic to gluten. You're like, what does gluten have to do with tariffs? Well, you see, ladies and gentlemen, gluten-free foods are on average 183 times more expensive than regular food.
Not times, percent. 183 times is crazy.
You a hoe.
We're leaving that in for sure.
We're not.
If I get my fraudulent slip left in on Elizabeth Holmes,
No.
we're leaving 183 times. That's so funny.
It's not. The tea with me is that every time we film this podcast, I, doing the labor of the Lord, trek down to where Cheyenne's mom lives and bring with me gluten-free goodies from Modern Bread and Bagel.
They are the best. Please sponsor us. You fuel our show.
Correct. So for those of you who don't know, both Cheyenne and I are gluten-free because
our bodies will not cooperate.
Yeah, and I have always been a carb junkie. But the thing about gluten-free goods is that on average, they're 183% more expensive than average food.
Right.
That's almost 3 times the amount. So that means when you spend $4 on cookies, I spend $12. It means that Trump's tariffs are going to have a huge impact on me because my gluten-free goodies are about to get even more expensive. And that's like particularly frustrating because food is so expensive already.
Right.
To say that we are going to add even 25% more onto gluten-free goods is literally going to break the bank. And I recognize that I'm fortunate enough to be able to afford gluten-free foods, but I also think about those who are in a less privileged position than I am, and I just don't know how they're going to be able to afford to eat.
Well, even non-gluten-free foods, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but a new study from a bipartisan policy institute found that the tariffs are expected to raise grocery costs more than 4% just this year, which is insane when this guy like ran on the cost of food and eggs, and now he's telling everybody that they're just going to have to deal with a little bit of pain.
Right, which is also crazy because if you're on a fixed income, food prices rising 4% means that maybe you don't get food.
Or maybe you can't afford your prescription.
Oh, well, prescription costs, especially generics, are going to rise as well. Because even though prescriptions themselves are exempt from the tariff issue, the components that make up these prescriptions, like the active ingredients, those are generally brought into places like India and China, and that's who actually manufactures most of our generic prescriptions.
Yep.
So it's just a really bad look.
Yeah, it's a really bad time to be a normal working class American. And I genuinely do not know how they are going to make this work over the next few years. Like the average American family is one unexpected medical bill away from bankruptcy. And you think we can withstand an extra 4% on food, not to mention the cost of everything else that will go up because of these tariffs. It's beyond me.
When Martha Stewart intentionally manipulated the market, she went to jail. So is Donald Trump going to go to jail for this? Like, is this an executive action? Because I don't know how making it so that everything is more expensive can be considered, for the people.
It is unfortunately definitely an executive action, just a really one.
Well, clearly we've already gotten into the cringe with that. So Cheyenne, what made you cringe this week?
This week, I am cringing at RFK.
Which stands for really crazy.
Crazy with a K.
Correct, because that's how unhinged he is.
I'm specifically cringing at his statement in response to news leaking that his department, the HHS, is now scrambling to rehire approximately 20% of the people that Doge came in and fired, and that they are scrambling to refund about 20% of the projects and studies that Doge came in and cut. His justification for doing this is that it was the plan all along. Old white guys truly have another level of audacity. And I really deeply believe if I possessed even 50% of that, I would be unstoppable.
It's called caucasity.
I'm gonna talk to the manager.
I really do believe that. Like, if I could trade in my imposter syndrome for whatever that is to monumentally up like that bad, and then be willing to come out and say that was the plan all along, was to make this profound mistake. I literally do not know how you do that. I feel like you have to have a brainworm for that to make sense. So maybe that's like a unique to RFK thing. Plus brainworm plus mercury poisoning. Don't forget about the mercury poisoning from the sheer amount of canned tuna he ate. I also want to mention here, Rachel got a tip this week that an entire department of scientists that worked in the FDA's Department of Food Safety, specifically testing foods to make sure they were safe for human consumption, were all cut by Doge. And this was from somebody that was like part of this firing. So I don't know if you like food poisoning, but get ready to have it become a much more regular part of your life if we're not testing food safety anymore.
What about babies dying?
Well,
this
yeah,
is the
that's
same
the other
department
huge
that
thing.
like discovered what was going on with the baby formula.
People forget so quickly. Like that was recent that they found all this lead in baby food. That was in what, bacteria, right?
That shouldn't be in anything that was found in the baby food. That's what matters to me.
And again, this is the party that's like, we need to have more babies, but also if you have a miscarriage while trying to have a child, we'll put you in jail. And also we're not going to check the safety of the baby food that very well may kill your child. So,
and also we're going to make sure that, you know, all the poor kids don't actually have free breakfast and lunch.
Yep. So yeah, that's my cringe. I'm cringing. Rachel, what are you cringing at this week?
This week, I'm continuing to cringe and bitch about Donald Trump and his caucasity. Cringing at the caucasity. So we know that...
Wait, sorry. Is it caucasity if you're orange?
Correct. Only white people turn orange.
Yeah, that's probably true. Fair enough.
So the thing is, Trump is rapidly up everything. But what was a rapid up from the beginning was his economic plan.
Yes.
It was a catastrophe? A white catastrophe? I don't know. This is the same economic plan that has removed hardworking workers from their position, deported them to El Salvador, deported the wrong people.
Yep.
And
deported the wrong people so blatantly that Joe Rogan is calling you out because that's how bad you up. When Joe Rogan becomes the voice of reason in your party, something has gone so awry.
This is the same person who hosted Fear Factor and had eat bugs. Okay? And now he's telling the president that something is wrong. America, we are so down bad. Like, we are cooked, okay? Caucasian cooked, meaning no seasoning. Okay? Anyway.
They deported all the people who know how to season food.
Oh my God. So if all of that wasn't bad enough, they are now reverting to child labor abuses. What are you talking about, Rachel? Well, Florida has proposed a bill that will remove child labor protections so that children can work overnight and work more than 30 hours a week. So if you are an impoverished family that needs another source of income, this is going to encourage parents to encourage their children to drop out of school so that they can work.
Yeah. I got in an argument about child labor laws with a woman on like Sirius XM conservative radio. I talked about this on the pod a long time ago. And one of the things we argued about was child labor laws because she said, I don't see what's wrong with that. We want to have freedom and discretion for parents. I don't want the government telling me what to do. You're assuming that all parents are like good actors and that they all have their children's best interests at heart. And also that they're not being acted on by forces that would make them desperate. And all of those assumptions are incorrect. There are people who do not give a about their kids, like way too many people. There are people who absolutely desperately need that income to make ends meet and feed all their kids. And that's how kids get exploited. And there's so many studies that show that child labor increases dropout rates, increases child abuse, that kids are way less likely to report labor abuses, that the rules are almost never followed. And they're doing this because they need to fill the jobs of all these people they deported.
What's frustrating to me is we're also looking at children who are disproportionately marginalized, whether they're in the foster care system or they've gotten in trouble before. So what we're really talking about is removing protections on minority children and being able to exploit them.
Right.
Sounds a lot like apprenticeship and slavery, if you ask me.
Yeah. And then the other point people make is, well, what's wrong with having the kid help out at the family business? You've always been able to do that. That has never been illegal. There are always exemptions for family businesses. So you and your like middle class experience of being able to participate in your family business, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about kids getting shoved back into factories where they lose fingers.
So now that we've been sufficiently sauteed and deep fried, it's time to go to the vibes. Cheyenne, what's your vibe this week?
My vibe is the controversy going on right now between the legal department at Duke University and the White Lotus. I'm not going to spoil the show for you, but in order to make this point, I will tell you a few basic details, which is
incest.
Okay, not related to the point I'm going to make.
Also, that is a spoiler.
That is a spoiler. Anyway, the father of the Ratliff family on this show, who is played by Jason Isaac of Harry Potter fame, this character is a graduate of Duke University. It's an integral part of his character in this show. And there are multiple scenes in which he's wearing a Duke t-shirt. In these scenes, he is contemplating self-harm. And Duke University put out a statement after the first one aired saying that they do not believe that this is an adequate representation of their university, and they think this scene is unnecessary and unnecessarily edgy, and viewers could get confused when they see the Duke logo and think that Duke has somehow endorsed this. And I think my favorite part about the whole thing is the first times it happened, Duke put out a statement like immediately after that. And then the next week, in the very next episode, there's a whole other version where it's the same fantasy, just worse. And he's wearing the Duke t-shirt again, which is just so funny. Like, White Lotus knew. They definitely saw this like legal letter and were like, well, buckle up because it's about to get worse. And now the season finale is this week. And I'm really curious if there's going to be some like horrific tragedy in a Duke t-shirt. But yeah, it is really funny. I feel like Duke is like overreacting. I honestly do not know if people would have even noticed or like remembered that he was wearing the t-shirt if the university hadn't made such a big deal about it in all these statements and interviews. But yeah, anyway, I just found it was really interesting, and they are trying to threaten maybe some kind of legal claim related to the intellectual property of using the name and imagery of like the Duke logo, but I think it's a stretch. Anyway, that's my vibes for the week. Rachel, what are you vibing on?
There's a couple things. First of all, I just want to announce to everyone who is our age that the Queen has returned. Lindsay Lohan is back. She's looking better than ever. She just got an award for Freakier Friday. We love the Freakiers. We love Fridays. It's giving everything. I'm sure you guys are curious about what's going on with Jockstrap. He's still bitching. This week, his lawyers opposed the motion to dismiss on his defamation suit because they say that the protection that Lively's lawyers cited to, which is that basically you can't sue someone in retaliation for a sexual assault claim or a sexual harassment claim, doesn't apply here because they require a reasonable basis that they're made without malice. And they argue that Lively made up all the allegations, so the law doesn't apply.
That's crazy.
I know, bruh. Your own company has documentation of the abuse.
And there were the settlement conferences. There were other people who filed complaints. How are you going to say it's not a good faith claim? Well, they're desperate, so that's how.
Caucasity.
Hey, Blake.
I don't know if Jesus is going to fix it or make it worse.
It's also just like male delusion, though.
I was trying to think of a name for male delusion, but one didn't come to me. Maybe next week. Finally.
Delusion. Fusion.
Oh my God.
These are getting cut.
Finally, we have our resident black embarrassment, also known as KK Kanye.
Oh, you're walking us through like a whole set of things in the pop culture world. Okay.
Correct, because there was just too much raggediness to be
a single
mentioned.
thing. Got it.
So Kanye has dropped his new album, World War III.
Ward War?
Bitch. Kanye has dropped his new album, World War III, which he proudly proclaims has an anti-Semitic sound.
What is an anti-Semitic sound?
I don't know. Maybe it means that he wore his black leather Klansman outfit, the same one he wore when he was ranting to DJ Academics in the recording studio. Y'all, the songs that are on this album.
Only one song is out, right? But the titles are
out.
out.
Titles. Let me just read to you some of these titles because it cannot be overstated. So we have World War III, Cosby, which is Kanye's first booty clap for a predator.
Cosby, like Bill Cosby.
Oh, track number 3 is Free Diddy.
That's the one that Northwest was he wanted her to be on, and then Kim like bust into the studio and took her out, right?
As she should.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but like
that's crazy.
Not the person who has been accused of drugging and raping people, you wanting to have your young teenage daughter be on a song supporting him.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's almost as bad as not Dirty Magazines or Bianca or Virgil Let Me Down, but number 7.
Wait. Sorry, this is like not important, but he's talking about Virgil, and Virgil's literally dead. Like he died of cancer. He can't defend himself.
He has a song called Hail Hitler.
Indefensible.
Oh, but number 8 is Hitler, Yay, and Jesus.
Wait, that's the one song title?
Hitler, Yay, and Jesus is song number 8. Then we have Jared, Money and Fame.
Jared?
Yeah. Red flag, bro.
Jared. I'm thinking like...
Subway Jared?
Subway Jared, like Jared Fogle.
I mean, it would fit the theme.
Oh, no. It's assumed that it's named after Jared Kushner.
Even worse than Jared Fogle.
Then we have nitrous, which is what all the kiddies are, inhaling these days.
He's got an ode to nitrous.
Also known as galaxy gas. And the final song is the live version called Live When Hitler Was Alive. So the crash out is real.
Are you going to talk about World War III, though?
Yes.
The one that's already out? You have to talk about some of these lyrics.
So the most important lyric to me is when Kanye explicitly says that he did not vote for Joe Biden, he voted for Donald Trump. And that is a damnation.
That's not the craziest. That is not the most important lyric of that song. That is not. Pull it up. You have to like.
I don't know if. Okay, listeners, listen, just know that Cheyenne is the one who forced you to endure these lyrics, not
because
me.
You need to know what's out there. And I guarantee you, because it's Kanye, this will get so many streams and we don't need to contribute to that. And so let us spare you of your curiosity having to stream it and contribute to his payday and just tell you the insane that's in there. And then you know.
They telling me that I'm a bully. I'm anti-Semitic fully. They saying I'm acting like Hitler. But how am I acting like Hitler when I am a
God.
Are you done yet? Sadly, no. They telling me get up off Twitter. I voted for Trump, not Biden. Know some ninjas that went to that island. Why the would you go to that island?
That's also crazy because you just said you voted for Trump and Trump like 100% was on that island.
Rockin' swastikas because all my ninjas Nazis. Reading Mein Kampf 2 chapters before I go to sleep.
Yeah.
So not only is America down bad, but apparently so are us blacks because we're still dealing with Kanye's bullshit.
It just sucks because as much as it's obviously insane, he is so famous that by nature of just putting it out there, it still moves the Overton window and gives it a level of credibility, even if it's minuscule, and introduces this kind of like dialogue into the mainstream.
The dialogue was entered into the mainstream when Elon and Steve Bannon threw up a Hail Hitler. Like, this is just reinforcing what I have been telling you for so long.
Yeah, but I think it's bringing it to like a different universe of people. You know what I mean? Like a different demographic, a different age group. And even if they like are looking at it and they're like, he's crazy, this is funny, it still eventually becomes normalized.
Well, Cheyenne has no hope for these people on the internet, clearly evidenced by last week's episode and today's commentary. And frankly, I don't have hope either.
I have hope. I'm not like a nihilist. I don't understand like who is publishing his music? Like who's producing this?
He is.
Who wants to be associated with this at all?
He published and produced everything. He's doing it himself. As realistic Rachel says, we are cooked. With that, I'm about to dive in to dark enlightenment theory.
So that's the end of your vibes and you're ready to dive?
Correct. Well, baddies, we all know that there's nothing more raggedy right now than the right wing. Speaking of the right wing, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the alt-right, the conspiracy right, the religious right, but I'm about to tell you about something that has been kept under wraps. A secret.
Why is that so sensual? ASMR, like weird. A right-wing secret.
Dark enlightenment theory. I know you have all been waiting with bated breath since last week when I first mentioned this. And I know some of you already looked it up because you like to spoil the show before it ends, just like me. Now, I recognize that dark enlightenment theory sounds like some weird Lord of the Rings type made up, but this is very real.
It is also, we'll get there later, tangentially related or inspired by Lord of the Rings type.
Leave my good brother Tolkien out of this, please.
I wish they did, but they did not. We'll get there.
As you probably noticed, our country is rapidly moving toward an autocracy. And that's really important in this dark enlightenment theory. Because
can we define autocracy for our listeners?
Just to remind you all, an autocracy is different than a monarchy because a monarchy is based on lineage, where an autocracy is just based on one mother being in charge.
Or one group of mother.
That's fair. Now, dark enlightenment theory has several booty clappers in positions of power. We're talking leaders in the tech world and, sadly, influential people in our own government. JD Vance, also known as our vice president, who loves Usha, even though she's not white.
And loves couches regardless of their race.
Oh my God.
No discrimination there. Leather. I don't know what other kinds of couches. Cotton. Nobody has a cotton couch. I don't know. Everything else is synthetic.
JD Vance is one of the top booty clappers for the leader of Dark Enlightenment, known as Curtis Yarvin, when he was discussing the takeover of wokeism and how it's detrimentally affecting us. He said, "So there's this guy, Curtis Yarvin, who has written about some of these things." So articulate. Elon Musk, dictator of Doge, has also referenced some of Yarvin's ideas, specifically RAGE. RAGE is an acronym for Retire All Government Employees. Seems to align perfectly with what Doge is trying to do right now.
Yeah, dismantle the entire system.
Musk is also friends with longtime booty clapper for dark enlightenment theory, Peter Thiel. Finally, Michael Anton, who I'm sure you have all never heard of, the director of policy planning for the Trump administration, has been spotted and appeared on multiple podcasts with Yarvin.
That's inside the government, but Yarvin and Dark Enlightenment have fans outside of the government as well, some who are equally, if not more powerful. Mark Andreessen, the prominent Silicon Valley venture capitalist who is a founding partner of Andreessen Horowitz. He also, in his off time, is a Humpty Dumpty impersonator. If you've never seen the shape of his head, you should. And a chronic, unapologetic acid reflux haver. Also, if you've never listened to a podcast he's been on, the guy be burping. He has repeatedly cited Yarvin's work. In one of his podcast appearances, he says, quote, "We are living under FDR's personal monarchy," which is a quote directly from some of Yarvin's work. Steve Bannon of Breitbart fame and former Trump administration advisor has also been a proponent of Yarvin's work, although he's not necessarily as in the fold as some of these other folks. Also worth noting is Balaji Srinivasan, the former chief technology officer of Coinbase, the cryptocurrency trading platform. Srinivasan said in an email directly to Yarvin himself, quote, "If things get hot, it may be interesting to sick the Dark Enlightenment audience on a single vulnerable, hostile reporter to dox them and turn them inside out with hostile reporting sent to their advertisers, friends, and contacts," according to reporting to the New York Times. There are others, Many others, but I'm sure you get the point. This has infiltrated not only our government, but also those who are in power in the tech sphere all across our country. In case you're not completely convinced of Dark Enlightenment's encroachment on the White House, I'll note here that Yarvin was an attendee of Trump's coronation ball. Is that correct? Coronation?
Yes.
Coronation, like for a king? That's crazy. Okay. Anyway, all that aside, we talked about who espoused it, we talked about who supports it, but what actually is Dark Enlightenment? In order to really understand Dark Enlightenment, we have to first talk about two pseudo-intellectuals who underpin this movement, Curtis Yarvin and Nick Land.
First up on Unhinged Caucasity is Curtis Yarvin, also known as Mencius Moldbug. Curtis Yarvin is an American computer programmer turned pseudo-intellectual fascist. He's been writing on a blog under the pen name of Mencius Moldbug since 2007, aka since I was 10 years old. If you're wondering what Mencius means, it's a Confucian philosopher during the Warring States period in China. And Moldbug is a play on the term gold bug. If you want to know what a gold bug is, you better Google it because I don't have time to go into all of that. Yarvin is the daddy of the neo-reactionary movement, sometimes referred to as NRX. And that's the political theory that underlines everything Dark Enlightenment is about. In the simplest of terms, to be a reactionary is to oppose society's current trend of social and political progress. These are anti-progressives. Now, typical reactionaries tend to be people that we associate with the modern trad movement and the religious right. These are the folks who want to return to the idealized past, the nuclear family, women as homemakers, men as providers, everyone going to church on Sunday. But Yarvin's reactionary thought is a little bit different in several key ways. What exactly Yarvin believes and the future that he envisions is what we'll be fleshing out here. So basically, without getting into the weeds, Yarvin's neo-reactionism is built on the notion that democracy is an ineffective and destructive system of government. And that's a quote. Yarvin's opposition to democracy, as I understand it, is that he doesn't believe democracy actually exists.
Which I think of all of his positions might actually be the most defensible, except his justification for it, I think, is incorrect. I think democracy doesn't exist because we've, instead of empowering voters and the populace, empowered corporations because of Citizens United, and you can basically buy our representatives and buy votes. That's not his perspective on why democracy doesn't really exist.
Well, Cheyenne, tell us about it.
Oh, I didn't even know it was my turn.
Yes.
I started talking. That's hilarious. It might sound a little bit jarring to hear that democracy might not exist, given that we basically grow up learning about how we live in a democratic system with elected officials and we have our civic duty to vote. But Yarvin points out that we may be living in a totally different reality. To explain this, I'm going to introduce a concept that Yarvin calls the cathedral. The cathedral basically symbolizes the collective influence of the media and academic institutions.
It's giving I hate Jews.
It is a little bit, isn't it?
It is. It's already
slope.
giving.
Yeah, the media, academia.
Yes.
We're like one step away from a Heil Hitler. Yarvin uses this religious metaphor here because, according to him, those kinds of institutions are the ones that exist to tell people what to think.
And what the truth is.
In Yarvin's words, the actual levers of power pass through the voters and go all the way back to the church. The church teaches the voters what to think. The voters tell the politicians what to do. Naturally, it is easy for the politicians to short circuit this process and just listen to the bishops.
This is weird because Yarvin is still on the right with the Christo-fascist booty clappers. So this kind of anti-church rhetoric is fascinating to me.
Yeah, I think it'll make more sense when we get into what really drives him. But it is a little bit in tension with what's going on the right more broadly. Yarvin concludes that Western democracies are not, in fact, democratic. They are instead governed by institutions that control the opinions of the electorate. So that begs the question, if we're not the ones making the decisions, who are?
Bring on the rage.
According to Yarvin, it's the administrative state that's making these decisions. Remember all those federal agencies we've been talking about over the last few weeks? In Yarvin's words, quote, because in the absence of effective external control, these civil services more or less manage themselves. Like any unmanaged enterprise, they often seem to exist and expand for the sake of existing and expanding.
Which is why he wants to retire all government workers. Remember that?
To summarize, in Yarvin's eyes, Western democracy is not a democracy at all because its voters are under the control of the cabal of universities and media outlets, and the government itself is run by an unaccountable administrative state. If that sounds familiar, it really feels like I could be taking talking points right out of Elon Musk's mouth. So if we've established what Yarvin thinks the problem is, and that people in the White House also think that this is the problem, what's his proposed solution?
Like all other Republicans, it makes no sense. Yarvin instead provides a list of complaints. He doesn't trust the voters. He doesn't trust the elected representatives. And Democratic leaders are only focused on getting their nut.
I don't like the way you phrase that.
Okay.
Getting their nut.
Yeah. Getting their nut.
Keep going.
Nick Land, who we'll talk about more later, elaborates on this point, saying political agents invested with transient authority by multi-party democratic systems have an overwhelming and demonstrably irresistible incentive to plunder society with the greatest possible rapidity and comprehensiveness. Anything they neglect to steal or leave on the table is likely to be inherited by political successors who are not only unconnected, but actually opposed, and who can therefore be expected to utilize all available resources to the detriment of their foes. For those of you that didn't really catch that, he's saying take everything, because if you don't, the person after you will take it, and they'll work against you. Yarvin proposes something called neo-cameralism. It's giving a lot of neos. Maybe neo-Nazi, but we'll get there. Based on the centralized economy of Prussia in the 18th and 19th centuries and modern city-states like Singapore and formerly Hong Kong, neo-cameralism makes the case for dividing up the world into numerous smaller city-states. These city-states would be governed by sovereign corporations.
Pause. That's crazy. I can't let you keep going. Sovereign corporations.
I told y'all.
Would be the property of a literal oligarch, not a government. I just had to
CEO kings.
I was gonna say double click that point, and then my own corporate lingo made me cringe.
Thank God.
I had to exclamation point what was it? I already forgot. It shocked me so bad my brain couldn't hold on to it. Sovcorps.
Well, these Sovcorps would operate more or less the same way that any other corporation does. They are owned collectively by shareholders who make up a board of directors that then nominate a CEO sovereign who exercises absolute authority within their territory. Just in case you missed it, absolute means all.
Literally CEO kings. That is their solution to the ills of government.
As if I haven't badgered this enough, the residents of these Sovcorps would have no political freedom. However, they would have the freedom to move to another city-state if they preferred. In Yarvin's words, the design is all exit, no voice. I shouldn't have to explain how impractical this is, although frankly, I don't think Yarvin particularly cares. So next time y'all think about going to your freedom cities, remember this.
Yeah, I want to point out that if you can't wrap your head around what that might look like and why it might be really problematic, it's not dissimilar from or uninspired by modern day China, which kind of operates on a policy of free exit. If you want to travel, if you want to move somewhere else, you can do that. However, you have no freedom and no voice here in any meaningful way. You do exactly what we give you the permission to do, no more, no less. And if you have something to say about it, there will be a crackdown. And obviously, that is incredibly problematic. So Yarvin has effectively gone full market brain on the idea of government. We're talking about the invisible hand of market forces is going to be running your life, which is crazy because it frequently fails to even effectively run and regulate our economy, i.e. the monopoly problem. I know that this sounds crazy, but he genuinely believes that we should let C-suite executives run our lives. And he's really not the only one trying to actively implement this. There is a whole lobby in Washington, D.C. advocating for the creation of these so-called freedom cities. Freedom Cities Coalition is advocating for the explicit goal of creating special development zones within the United States, which are governed entirely by corporations and or wealthy investors, or some combination of the two. The reason that they state is they want to be able to push scientific, technological, or economic development within these special development zones without being hampered down by the oversight of government. That oversight, by the way, is health and safety regulations, labor laws, things that are, not really controversial until you want to make a ruthless
Cheyenne, I don't think you said anything controversial, if you want the regular people to have rights.
Yeah. I also want to point out too, and this isn't even in the outline, but I geek out about this because this isn't something out there in the imagination land. There is one of these special development zone freedom city things that is already in existence that is having horrible ramifications on human rights in Honduras. It's called Prospera, and it's a CEO run corporate zone. It's a really long story, but they essentially tricked the government of Honduras out of this zone, and they're exploiting workers. People have died, and there has been no meaningful way to get justice because it's not subject to the jurisdiction of a government. It's subject to the jurisdiction of CEOs. There's weird, dangerous medical trials. You can go there and basically get any done to you. And if something goes wrong, oh well. And that's the model that they want to enact in the United States. And I also want to point out that the people who make up the Freedom Cities Coalition, these aren't bat crazy weirdos that knocked on the door of the White House and got turned away. Some of the people that make up this coalition are already Donald Trump's friends. They are investors that he knows well. They are people who were at his inauguration. And I really do think that these people have a foothold in the White House and a very good chance of getting what they want.
Cheyenne, who does Yarvin think should be the CEO monarch that's running these Sovcorp city-states?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? Because if democracy is a failing institution, how do you decide? Well, through a little bit of white supremacy, because primarily Yarvin wants tech geeks of Eurasian ancestry. Yarvin's work frequently intersects with race realist or human biodiversity type theories, which make the widely debunked case that there are natural racialized differences in human intellect, and that programs that emphasize diversity and inclusion are just ignoring, quote, facts. So really what we're talking about is
more white supremacist bullshit.
No,
which is obviously why I brought this to the pod.
Eugenics is what we're talking about.
Yes.
Jesus, I couldn't find it. I kept wanting to say euthanasia, which is wrong. What we're talking about is eugenics, just with the weird Silicon Valley tech spice eugenics.
Correct. Which is obviously why I brought this to the pod, because we all know that if there's something I'm going to complain about, it's white supremacy and eugenics.
Rachel, how do we know for sure that he's a white supremacist? Because, people throw that label around. Does he really deserve it?
Like everyone else that I've called a white supremacist, Curtis Yarvin 100% deserves the label. Yarvin says himself, although I'm not a white nationalist, I am not exactly allergic to the stuff. What does that mean?
If you're not, I don't even know what to say. If you're not allergic to it, what does that mean? You're neutral? You'll take a side of white supremacy if it comes with your entree? That's crazy. Maybe he's saying he's not allergic to it because he also likes Asians?
100%.
Because he's also added Asians to the mix of acceptable ruler CEO kings.
But don't worry, because he still booty claps for slavery and makes numerous thinly veiled analogies that attack Black people and their intelligence and their humanity.
Well, some of them aren't so thinly veiled, right?
And this is all while insisting on using the word Negro.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't think that's thin. That's thick. That's thick racism.
So what a lot of people don't know is that while Curtis Yarvin is by far the most influential thinker in Dark Enlightenment, he isn't actually the person who's the intellectual foundation of this movement. That person is Nick Land. Nick Land didn't start out all bad. In the beginning, he was actually on the left. He founded the Cybernetic Culture Research Unit, CCRU, at Warwick University in 1995. Where he was a professor. The CCRU gathered a group of faculty and students who were enamored with the ideas that are broadly associated with accelerationism. Accelerationists posit that technological and economic progress are inevitable and the only viable path forward for humanity. This doesn't sound that cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, right?
I was just about to say that. On the very surface, that sounds like it might be correct, right? Like we have to move technology and the economy forward or we're not going to survive. But we get off the rails fairly quickly.
Many accelerationists believe that social or political progress is at best secondary to technological progress. And at worst, antithetical to it.
You're losing me. Yeah, this is where we go into a whole other direction, which is ruthless pursuit of technological and economic advancement to the detriment of any kind of basically human rights. The CCRU's published writings are difficult to decipher and frequently devolve into the occult, science fiction, and quasi-religious territory, which is a little bit weird when you harken back to the fact that it was a department at Warwick University. But this quote is taken from their writings at the time. In addition to the twins with their currents and time systems, and the gates with their channels and time faults, there is a third occult thread running through Lemurian time sorcery, that of the distances or of the demons. No, we have no idea what that means. Literally none.
Obviously, this went bad fast.
In 1998, Nick Land left academia, which is surprising. I don't understand how he got to just leave versus being kicked out after that. And he moved to Taiwan, followed by China. When I say Taiwan, all I can think about is White Lotus. Have you seen the clip? You want to live in Taiwan? Dylan, give me a picture of Parker Posey, please.
You want to live in Taiwan?
Then he moved to China, which proved to be a foundational and really important moment in the transformation of this philosophy. Remember when I talked about China earlier and how they really subscribe to this no freedom but free exit kind of model? Land was very inspired by this. This really dialed in Land's fixation on the power of the state to accelerate technological progress, and this went on to color a lot of his future ideas and writings. In 2012, Nick Land published the essay, The Dark Enlightenment, which gives the name to the movement that we're talking about today. You were probably wondering by now when the we were going to talk about why it has such a weird name. The essay is really poorly written, and it's riddled with rambling typos and carpet bombed with all this weird jargon, and it often reads less like a work of philosophy and more like the manifesto of a madman.
I know, because I read all 60 whatever pages of it, so...
Yeah, and that's why Alex is a little in the head today. He didn't sleep because he's reading Nick Land and Curtis Yarvin all night. You're welcome for this, viewers. His sacrifice. In his essay, Land makes many of the same points that we've already heard from Yarvin. In fact, often referencing Yarvin's writings, who he refers to as the Sith Lord, which, if you haven't cringed hard enough yet, a grown man referring to another grown man as the Sith Lord? Ooh, God.
I feel like that's also because they know what they're saying is evil.
That's the thing, too, is like, why would you call it the Dark Enlightenment yourself? You would give it that title unless you're super into like the cringy edgelord. Like, how do you think that's going to be appealing to people if that's like the energy you're going for?
But it's not supposed to be appealing to people. It's supposed to be appealing to rich white supremacists who want to exert their power and go back to feudalism.
Yeah, it's just still surprising to me to a certain extent because the human brain like never wants to believe that you're the evil one. Like you want to have this sense that somehow morally what you're doing is on the right side, even if it's not for other people that you may see as the enemy for you and your family and the people like you. And when you call it dark enlightenment or you refer to the people you revere as a Sith Lord, I don't see how you think anyone is going to be aligned with that ideologically. And obviously I'm proved wrong by the fact that a lot of people are. And a lot of people do subscribe to this and are deeply moved by these writings and are integrating them into our government. But I don't know. It feels like a very man thing to me. You know what it feels like to me? Very like incel Reddit.
White people bullshit.
And aside, after this whole Sith Lord thing, both of these guys are absolutely obsessed with sci-fi stuff. Their writings are littered with references to Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, H.P. Lovecraft, and Frank Herbert's Dune.
So this is deeply, deeply concerning to me as someone who has a Lord of the Rings tattoo in Elvish. But also, random fun fact about H.P. Lovecraft, he named his cat Nigger Man. So there's that.
That's crazy. I guess that's why he's ideologically in the same vein as Curtis Yarvin.
Land argues that SovCorps will be able to propel unmitigated technological innovation, free of the safety and equity regulations that current governments place on it.
Don't worry, soon you will be free of safety and equity. It's crazy. That's how you know it's literally only being written for like the rich controlling elite that see those things as negative.
He suggests that through these changes, society will reach a point in which its CEO kings, guided by immensely powerful AI tools, will be able to solve all of humanity's problems.
Bruh.
By problems, they mean diversity.
By problems, they mean any dissent.
Land has some other suggestions too, but they're mostly concerned with airing grievances about progressive racial politics, aka he hates the blacks, like I've said 75 times. So clearly we have a couple of weirdos with what I want to consider fringe, but I know are actually widespread political beliefs. But what I want to know is why these losers are able to define the ideology of the technological right. Just kidding, I know the answer. And so do you. It's the shmoney, honey. The answer is Peter Thiel. If you aren't familiar with billionaire Silicon Valley venture capitalist Peter Thiel, he made his fortune co-founding PayPal and later being an investor in Facebook.
He actually looks like a ghoul, too, like a literal gargoyle.
This conservative megacuck donates copious amounts of money to the right wing and the magats. But that really underplays the huge role that he plays in United States politics. Thiel isn't just a money spigot for Republican politicians. He's an ideologue. He's made a conscious effort to shape conservative politics. He's like the Koch brothers. He's invested heavily in the political career of J.D. Vance, who once worked at Thiel's venture capital firm, Mithril Capital. I'm so mad because that's another Lord of the Ring reference.
I know. They've really appropriated it. I'm sorry. I feel like anybody who is like a fan knows that you have to really miss the point. So Thiel obviously has a huge influence in politics, but his influence is even larger in Silicon Valley. According to his biographer, Max Chafkin, quote, Thiel is secretly the most important person in Silicon Valley. I'm not sure how much of a secret that is, honestly, anymore. Thiel's investment successes, combined with his bold political takes, have turned him into a sort of sage of Silicon Valley. When he speaks, people listen. Not to mention, Thiel is personally connected to or even invested in some of the most popular and powerful people in the Valley right now. His early company merged with Elon Musk to form PayPal. He was an early investor in Facebook, which placed him right in the ear of Mark Zuckerberg. Thiel was an early financial contributor to OpenAI, the creator and runner of ChatGPT. He's also a co-founder of Palantir.
You know the crystal ball that Saruman looks into to see the Shire?
That's not what he's a co-founder of, but it is a Lord of the Rings reference. Palantir is a big data analytics company, which is used by ICE and the US military for surveillance purposes.
Just like the Palantir was used to survey the hobbits.
That's so diabolical. Like, why would you name it that? YouTube co-founder Chad Hurley worked for Thiel for a time at PayPal, and the list goes on and on. My point is that Thiel's money, and by proxy, his influence and his relationships are all over Silicon Valley, and it gives him an inordinate amount of control over what goes on there.
So I know we've talked about the shmoney, honey, but what does Thiel have to do with Dark Enlightenment?
A lot, actually. Thiel was an early supporter of Yarvin's work, and in 2013, Yarvin's company, Urbit, received funding from Thiel's founder fund, including another financial entanglement to this web. Look, Peter Thiel is incredibly litigious, which means he loves to sue. So I am totally baselessly speculating here when I talk about his decision to invest in Urbit. But this is a really small company without necessarily a lot of growth potential. And so his decision to invest in Urbit really looks like it could be simply a vehicle to give Yarvin a shitload of money to basically carry on his work. Thiel is also no stranger to making neo-reactionary statements himself. In his 2014 book, 0 to 1, Thiel made the case that corporate governance is superior to democratic governance because it is ruled by a single decision maker. Thiel also wrote in 2009, quote, "I no longer believe that freedom and democracy are compatible." Which again is giving like, whose freedom? The freedom of your company to exploit the resources and consumers and do whatever it wants, or personal freedom? Oh yeah, you guys don't really care about that. Reading between the lines, Thiel is arguing that democracy constrains the freedom of people like him, the tech oligarchy, to do as they please, a sort of tyranny of the majority.
Now, if you're still a little confused, you have to realize that the Dark Enlightenment theory is over 60 pages of chaos, cuckery, and just doesn't make a lot of sense. To wrap all this up, Dark Enlightenment has found its way into our government and the minds of some of the most influential billionaires today. It's a fundamentally undemocratic movement that seeks to create a dictatorship for the wealthy. Silicon Valley elites think they know what's best for us and that only tools that they build can save us.
In a lot of ways, their tools only serve to automate and accelerate inequality, but okay.
I mean, that's true. The proponents of Dark Enlightenment theory are outright hostile to the concept of equity and fairness. They believe in inequality. That means racial inequality, gender inequality, and they think that these things are immutable human characteristics, not based on social or political forces. They think that certain people are inherently inferior to others. So yes, we are talking about race realism, but they also want to exterminate people, which is why we're talking about eugenics. Baddies, don't believe the hype. The proselytizers of Dark Enlightenment theory are going to try to convince you that they're trying to advance all of humanity. But really, they're only in it for themselves. And this isn't theoretical at this point, because these crack-ass ideas are now in the White House. Look no further than the way that the tech class has worked to curry favor with the Trump administration, the way that Elon Musk and Doge have gutted the administrative state, or the ongoing attacks that Trump, Musk, Vance, and others have levied against the news media, American universities, and our allies. Dark Enlightenment, just like white supremacy, has thrived in secret. Most people haven't heard of Curvis. Oh my God. Curvis is insane. Most people haven't heard of Curtis Yarvin, Nick Land, and Peter Thiel. And until recently, their philosophies mostly resided on edgy message boards and Silicon Valley group chats. But now it's time for them to be exposed before they infiltrate and destroy our democracy.
One of the things I think is an effective strategy when it comes to exposing these people and effectively neutralizing some of their ideas is taking a page, I guess, out of the Tim Walz playbook, which is pointing out that these guys are all really weird. So not only are they grown men who call each other Sith Lords.
They're not cute. We wouldn't date them. They would be swiped left.
Yeah, they all look like ghouls. a lot of them subscribe to like the weird ideology that they should never die, and are in these groups of billionaires that go on these weird retreats to figure out ways to technologically biohack their way to immortality. And a lot of the they do makes them look like gargoyles and ghosts. Literally, like I need a picture of Peter Thiel. I need a picture of Brian Johnson, like the Don't Die guy. These are very, very strange people. They're awkward. They tend to have relationships that are only attracted because they have billions of dollars. They are just strange, strange people. And there is, I think, a certain level of bullying that is socially required.
It's societal shaming.
It's required in this situation. There is a reason that generally Democratic leaders have to be charismatic. They have to seem like relatable human beings. And that's part of the reason why I think these guys are so hostile to democracy, because they're f***ing weird and people would never, ever choose them. Normal people would never, ever choose them.
What
to
she's
lead
saying
society.
is they're ugly.
And they just like don't have empathy. It's like blatant. It's something that they brag about.
Oh no, the whole empathy shaming thing is like huge right now.
Yeah, Elon Musk saying empathy is a weakness. And then he gets on cable news and cries about why people don't care that his stock values have gone down.
Oh my God. But then I saw this like clip of this like uber right Christian podcast that says we need to take empathy out of the Bible, which is insane.
Whoa.
Because like, what is Jesus if not like one of the most empathetic leaders of all time?
That's crazy.
We're just gonna cut the New Testament out.
Yeah, just get rid of the whole New Testament, I guess.
Well,
We're going back to Leviticus society.
Jesus.
Apparently, buckle up. So yeah, I guess that's my super non-academic proposed way that we should fight back against dark enlightenment and these thinkers is we should bully them. A lot of them needed to be bullied and were able to skirt their way out of it by becoming billionaires. And
Not pro-bullying.
I'm pro-bullying anti-democratic fascist weirdos. You can put that on the record.
I'm all for a good societal shame.
Rachel, thank you for taking us down the path of this deep dive. I didn't know much at all about dark enlightenment. I feel unfortunately enlightened, and I am pro-bullying these weirdos. And with that, what is living rent-free in your mind this week?
Well, what's been living rent-free in my head this week is this week's White Man Gone Wild. Introducing Congressman Keith Self, a Republican from McKinney, Texas, who used a direct quote from Joseph
Goebbels.
who used a direct quote from Joseph Goebbels, which said, "It is the absolute right of the state to supervise the formation of public opinion." And I think that may be what we're discussing here. What? He quoted this in a back and forth with Nina Jankowicz, the CEO of the pro-democracy group American Sunlight Project. In case you don't know, Joseph Goebbels was the minister of propaganda for the Third Reich under Hitler. His role was to convince the German people to support the Hitler regime. Now, there was outrage from the Democrats as usual, but the wild part about this is that this is not the first time that Keith Self has quoted Joseph Goebbels.
Yeah, I think that's the craziest part to me is you can't even try to argue that this was somehow like out of context or not characteristic of your character when you've done it multiple times on the record.
In 2010, when he was running for re-election as a county judge, he tried to bite back at his opponent by saying, if you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it.
Another Goebbels quote. If you have Goebbels quotes, multiple, just like ready off the top of your head to respond to a situation, you might be a Nazi. I feel like I'm setting up for like a Jeff Foxworthy, like you might be a redneck joke. If you can reference Joseph Goebbels on demand, you might be a Nazi.
If throwing up Nazi salutes isn't enough, are they going to booty clap for these Joseph Goebbels quotes too? Like, I just don't even know. There is no semblance of not being a Nazi at this point.
It's crazy that you can get censured for standing up and making a point about not defunding Social Security, but quoting Joseph Goebbels in Congress in your official capacity is not censure-worthy.
Yeah, we're down bad. America is cooked. So, Cheyenne, what's living in your head rent-free?
Living rent-free in my head this week is Cory Booker's 25-plus hour-long filibuster on the Senate floor. If you didn't see it, it was viral. There were clips of it everywhere online, and Booker filibustered, saying that he was responding to the outrageous actions of the Trump administration and that this was not a time for business as usual. I have a lot of questions, and I guess I wanted to discuss with you what this all means, because I've seen mixed responses. First of all, one point is there was no bill on the floor at the time of this filibuster, which makes it not actually a filibuster. It means he was giving a 25-plus hour-long speech on the Senate floor, obstructing technically nothing. However, politics is inherently symbolic. It is all about optics, and especially against a Republican Party that is excellent at manipulating optics in the news cycle to their benefit, Democrats could benefit from learning how to create spectacles of their own. This seems to have been a moment and have been a spectacle. Certain people seem to be inspired by this, and there were things that he said of some substance. He apologized for himself and the failings of the Democratic Party in response to this moment created by Donald Trump. He owned and took accountability for the ways that they have not adequately resisted. At the same time, about, 24 hours later, he voted to send more missiles to Israel. So it's also interesting, he spoke for 25 hours. There's a lot that he said. I also think it tells you a lot if you look at what he didn't say. There's no mention of Trump's attacks on American universities or university students and green card holders that are protesters for Palestine or activists for Palestinian human rights. And that is one of the largest issues in Democratic politics right now, is resistance to the idea that people can be deported, detained, disappeared without due process. So I don't know. I guess the question is, what does it all mean? Was it good? Was it something? Was it worth it? Should other Democrats take note? Do we cheer this moment? One of the things about the optics here is that his filibuster broke the record for the longest speech on the Senate floor. This was a record held by
Strom Thurmond, notorious racist extraordinaire.
Yeah, and his filibuster, Strom Thurmond's previously longest ever filibuster, was in opposition to the passage of the Civil Rights Act, which I didn't do the brain damage of pulling quotes from that speech, but I'm sure it's like 24 hours of racism, which is crazy. Like, if your speech is justifying why the passage of the Civil Rights Act is such an atrocity, I'm sure it's just laden with brain damaging racist nonsense.
Kind of like everything the magats are saying right now and our lipless press secretary spews every day.
Well, she's got lips now, but they're looking real grinchy.
No, she doesn't.
Have you seen the picture of her lips next to Jim Carrey's like the Grinch?
Bruh.
It's so funny.
And this is why you should invest in a Kylie lip kit, because she could have helped you, girl.
Yeah, man. Like, sometimes all you need is lip liner. Yeah, anyway, I guess that's my question is, what do we think? How do we feel? One of the reasons I do think that Democrats struggle with public opinion and with gaining momentum in public opinion and in the media is that we are notoriously our own worst critics in a lot of ways. And whenever we do something to try to create a moment and send a message, there are always people on our own team that are poking holes in it and taking issue with somewhere where it wasn't enough or something else that was overall wrong. And that's problematic too. So I don't know. I can't sneeze at the fact that there were a lot of people in the Democratic Party who are looking for hope right now and who were really desperate to feel like there is some kind of resistance going on. And this created a moment and a spectacle. And hey, to hold something in the news cycle and to have CNN or MSNBC talking about what you're doing for over a day is kind of crazy. But at the same time, it did not actually legislatively accomplish anything. And I don't know. And it could have been really self-serving. Like, Cory Booker has run for president before. We know he has these like aspirations. And there is a massive hole in future leadership for this party right now, and a big question mark on who is going to be the face of our next presidential race. I could see him trying to use this as a way to jumpstart that next jump up. So I don't know. Do you have a feeling about this?
I think it wasn't just the Democrats that needed hope. I think it was the American people. I do think him reading some of the letters that his constituents wrote to him, it made people at least feel seen and heard. And he didn't just read letters from constituents that voted for him. He read letters from constituents who did not vote for him. And I think that reinforced the idea that he was trying to do something that stood up for all of the American people rather than just the people who ideologically aligned with him. Frankly, I don't see how it could be bad. He was trying to crash out for democracy in his own milquetoast liberal way. And I think we do have to pause and appreciate that. I don't think that it's ever going to be enough. I don't think it's ever going to be enough because we're down bad. We're cooked. Like, being a Gen Zer, and, you know, we went to law school at the same time, knowing that I worked my entire life to get to where I am today, and I'm now watching people completely disrespect the power of the judiciary, try to run for a third presidential term, try to change the Constitution through executive order. I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
I didn't go to school for 12 plus 4 plus 3. What is that?
19.
That many years just to have this.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us did. So it's like, how can you not expect, especially the younger generation, to just be so radicalized and demoralized? The first election that we got to vote in was Trump versus Hillary.
Yeah.
So the political experiences that we've had and the life experience that we've had is just not great. It's kind of a crash out.
So you're pro Booker's crash out for democracy. I think that's where I land, honestly.
I'm pro-black, so pro-Booker, pro-black.
I take issue, obviously, with basically immediately after that going and sending more weapons of mass destruction to a genocidal regime.
On brand.
But I don't know, are like missiles and warheads technically weapons of mass destruction? Is there like a classification for that? Yeah, okay. Well, don't come for me, really specific war nerds. If you can blow up thousands of civilians, that feels like mass destruction to me. All right. But I don't know. I also think on the net, like, I'm really sick of nothing ever being good enough. And I think that's part of why we can't move the needle forward, is let them be our resistance. Like, we got to be able to get on board with something. And like, what did it hurt? Did it hurt anything?
I just don't think that we're ever going to create any possible change by criticizing people who we feel like aren't making enough change instead of the people who are directly opposing change.
That's interesting. It's kind of controversial, though.
No, it's not. It shouldn't be, because this is how we ended up with Trump. People said, I don't like Kamala. She's not progressive enough, so I'm not going to vote. And look where we are now. Crashing out, broke as hell, with ugly men in charge. So to summarize today's episode, what you got was a lot of wild white men and the failing of the American democracy. Tune in next week to see.
See, I have to pause because Rachel always wants to leave you guys on this note that like everything is lost. And I fundamentally disagree with that.
I don't think everything is lost. I think everything is up, and you have to flush the toilet every time you take a You can't just leave it in there. Okay. So we need to flush the toilet so we can have a clean bowl.
Yeah, I can double click. Not me with the corporate lingo again. I've been working too much. I'm gonna double click on that.
Can we circle back?
Can we circle back? I feel like I got like through osmosis sucked up the dark Enlightenment tech bro lingo. That's rough. Anyway.
Well, with that, baddies, we're going to keep on walking, hopefully walking towards democracy like Cheyenne did in her little viral video. And with that, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye, baddies.